All right. So everybody, mayor and council, the mayor, Eleanor is more familiar with the PI program.
Well, John, this is still a public meeting. Let's call this meeting to order.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
All right, let's turn the recording on.
Thank you. Vic, you're very dark.
This conference will now be recorded.
Pay your electric bill, Nick. Pay that electric bill.
I turn my light on. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute.
Joyce, do you have it?
I'm in the office.
I got one in the back. Okay. Pledge your allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, very good. We suck. All right.
One day.
It gives us something to shoot for.
You know what?
Let's do roll call, please.
Wait 1 second, I lost everybody now.
Oh boy, here we go.
We see you.
Can we see you, Joyce?
Okay, 1 minute. I'm going to get you back in a second. Okay.
All right.
Roll call.
Mayor Kapadas.
Here.
Mrs. Passio.
Here.
Mr. Ranieri.
Here.
Mr. Lovenstein.
Here.
Mr. Farrell.
Here.
Mrs. Kelly.
Here.
And Mr. Shapiro.
Here.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but public statement pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given and properly advertised 48 hours before this meeting. I can't remember the rest. I don't have it. That's it? Okay. So now, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ranieri to go over the special meeting is only for one item only. So we cannot discuss anything but the PI program. Mr. Ranieri?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everybody. Everybody say hello to Alex Torpy.
Hi, Alex.
Hello. Has been the mayor of a town up north. I don't know if it's more than one town. He's been the administrator. He's been with the Sustainable program for quite some time. And the Sustainable New Jersey program has hired him to choose a few towns, one of which we are, I think 4. Alex will tell us a little more. And it's the PI program. I've been talking about it, it seems like, for 6 months now. And we are at the stage that we're ready to implement it. It's a long kind of a roadmap to where we want to be. Ultimately, I'm going to stop there. Alice can say hello and introduce the program to everybody.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you allowing me the meeting to come here and talk a little bit about the program that we just worked on. And so what I'll cover here briefly is just what Sustainable Jersey wanted to do with this program. So this is the Public Information and Engagement Technology Assessment. This is the program that Sustainable Jersey had run in the past. As Council mentioned, there were four towns that ultimately got the technical assistance from us on this program out of about 15 or 20 towns that applied for it. And so one of the things that we were really interested in was, in Runnemede's application, all of the already ongoing activities meant to sort of build community, build public information. We wanted to work with towns that were really interested in doing this. And so what we did, the program was set up to basically go through a couple steps. The first step was to do sort of a needs assessment, help us learn a little bit about the borough, a little bit about technology capacities, budget, ongoing activities, and then we went through a process of identifying some future goals. And so everybody that was on the team, kind of went back, thought about the future a little bit, recorded some notes down, and actually built a vision statement and a mission statement and some goals that went along with all of that. And there was a little bit of back and forth after that. And then on our end, we basically took, some of my best practices from being a mayor and administrator and a public administration professor, some of Sustainable Jersey's best practices, and we produced this report that was really meant on, not telling you all what your goals are in your community, because you know that better than anybody else does, but sort of giving you some platforms, some best practices, some checklists, some ideas to help support whatever it is that you want to do, for your community. And so it came very clear in reviewing all of the materials, what the borough, how much the borough wanted to be a leader in sustainability, and not just the little things, some of the really big picture things as well, which, as you all know, are kind of big long-term projects. And there were a lot of other things, especially around the community building. I can say that all of us were impressed with some of the information that was contained in the Heart and Soul narrative for that program. And so, obviously all of us now, a little more than a year after the introduction of, COVID-19 into all of our personal lives and municipal everything, I know that there have been a lot of activities sort of building up some community engagement, volunteer engagement, and, like a lot of things, COVID really slowed a lot of that down, made a lot of that really difficult to do. And so, what I'm sort of hoping to do in this meeting is just give a little bit of an overview of the report. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm going to try and keep the kind of presentation side brief, and then just spend a little time if anybody has any questions where you want to sort of dig into any area in a little more detail. All of this is meant to sort of help you identify ways that you can use technology to improve public information engagement for the purposes of helping you accomplish your goals. And so that's sort of the story here. And so I'm just going to dive right in and start running through things. Please, anybody feel free to interrupt me if what I say doesn't make sense, or if you want to stop for a minute. But keep in mind also that I'm going to try and leave a bunch of time for us to have a discussion where I can answer any questions that might come up.
Alex, before you dive into it and you really get into the meat of everything, I just wanted to thank Eleanor Kelly, for all the work that she did on this program. She was very instrumental in getting the information and the back and forth. I just want to thank you, Eleanor, for all the work you did. And let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, and if I can even add, I'll appreciate all of you that were participating on it. Every town is a little different who's participating, but obviously it's really beneficial to have a mayor and council members so interested in supporting all of this. So that's a big first step. All right, so what I'm going to do here is in the report that hopefully you all have a copy of, I'm going to start with just the kind of recommendation section and just run through these 7 recommendations. I'm going to hit a few important points along the way and then kind of keep it at that. And then we can dive into any area in a little more detail. So recommendation 1 is obviously an important one. It became very clear. So part of the process was having different people identify what the goals for the borough are in the future. And what became very clear from all of that was that the borough really wanted to be a leader here. So what we had was a couple different pieces to this. We had a couple short-term things. Now, I know there's already some things that are in progress. I know, Councilman, you mentioned some of the electric vehicle chargers recently, which is great. That's something that I've done in every town that I've been a mayor administrator. Like, that's such a good step to take. And it's also really great from a sort of downtown development, business recruitment, providing places, because people with electric vehicles have the apps to show them where the chargers are. And if your town is on there, maybe you get somebody pull off and, stop in a restaurant or something, while their car's charging. So it's a great thing to do. A couple other small things that we noted in the report is in some municipal facilities, this is a tough year to talk about going from industrial strength cleaning products to natural cleaning products, but it is one area that's often overlooked that has an environmental impact, is talking to your cleaning services, or maybe even looking at other towns that have companies that do cleaning that they're really happy with, and going in together to purchase, for example, bathroom tissue that isn't made from trees. And so they can source that from more sustainable places like bamboo or sugarcane. And there's other products like that that just, they're all small parts of the bigger puzzle, but they all make a difference. And especially when you think about some of the cleaning products, a lot of cleaners will use bleach and really strong stuff all the time when there might be more natural alternatives that might be, that might be better for the folks that are working in those environments. So that's like a really small, low-hanging fruit. There's a Sustainable Jersey action for that. And one of the things that we included and sent over is sort of a checklist of all the actions the borough has already completed, and the checklist of actions from Sustainable Jersey that are not completed yet, and to try to make it easy for you all to kind of see what more you can do to qualify for the different tiers of Sustainable Jersey. I mentioned the paper products as well. And one of the things that we'll talk a little bit about is thinking about, obviously there's an interest in interacting with your community members and members of the public, business owners, more electronically, but it's worth thinking about all the different paper processes that you might use currently. So two that come up all the time in my time as an administrator are purchasing requisitions and the purchasing process, and contracts and agreement signing. Both of those are processes that can be done electronically. From a purchasing standpoint, both Munidex and Edmunds have an online, an electronic requisition process that, it takes a little bit of time to get it set up. But when you think about the amount of money you might spend on paper, or the amount of time it takes to actually physically move documents from person to person, you might come out on top actually money-wise by doing the online purchasing or the electronic purchasing modules. And electronic contract signing is one of the ones that it's sort of like it's one that I always end up on, because we've been able, federal law has allowed us to sign contracts electronically for almost 20 years, but so many processes are still done, especially things with the state, are still done, in multiple signatures, and we're overnighting packages from one town to another to get grants signed off on. And electronic contract signing can just eliminate all of that. So it's not just the paper costs and the environmental costs, but it's the postage costs and the environmental costs of driving pieces of paper from one place to another, when, we can just do that all electronically. There's free services and really inexpensive services that help with electronic contract signing. I've executed contracts that have been accepted by the state for grants, where we've got multiple mayors in different towns signing off and the clerk, and it takes 5 minutes literally to do the whole thing. People pull it up on their phone, they hit sign, and it's much more secure than paper signatures. So those are just some low-hanging fruit ideas. Additionally, going through your existing green team that I know is already active. We're going to talk a little more about some of the volunteer engagement stuff, but trying to find ways to resources that you can provide business owners and residents about energy efficiency savings that they can do, in their home, in their business. There are some programs available from the state for that. And the last, or second to last, is the New Jersey, the direct install energy audit and upgrades. I don't know if that's something that you all have done in the past in your municipal buildings. It's pretty easy to do. It's done through the Board of Public Utilities and the DEP. And basically they send out contractors for free. They look through all your municipal buildings and identify lighting and HVAC that could be upgraded. You only pay 30% of the costs. They pay 70%, and that 30% you can actually pay off over 3 years at 0% interest. So it's a nice program. It can help pay for the cost of getting things upgraded. Even towns, for example, in Lambertville, they had done it maybe 7 or 8 years ago. We did it again, and a bunch of new things were found. So even if you've done it, it's worth doing again because it's free. And the other thing is there is an energy tracking and management. Yeah, sorry, is there a hand?
No, I don't think so.
The other thing that you can do, and there's an action for this with Sustainable Jersey, is tracking and managing your energy usage. And so we have a link to that in the report for a little more information. So those were a couple of the small pieces that just might help you as you're building out some of the larger plans that you can think about. And Sustainable Jersey obviously is, you know, the best resource that any of us could really ask for everything related to that. You know, that is really their bread and butter. Okay, so recommendation number 2 was to identify short and long-term solutions to improve public information engagement. One of the things, and that's sort of a catch-all recommendation here, part of this that we recommend is doing that, figuring out what you're going to do to engage with your community with a committee that is made up primarily of members of the public. You might have a governing body member or two, maybe a staff person who's assisting on that, but that basically you have a group of people that is helping you prioritize what the community thinks is the most important. Because if they don't think it's important, then, you know, what's the point, potentially? I know there's, you know, so it's important not only to have the sort of volunteer infrastructure for that, but what's also possible, I know this is tough, especially with the size of the borough government and every, you know, existing staff person, I'm sure, having a to-do, you know, an inbox much bigger than the outbox, is thinking about part-time paid staff assistance with some of these things that could potentially be done with other towns. I know that's an idea that's already been thought about, and I would just lend, you know, lend our encouragement to thinking about that, especially thinking about it with other towns that you might be able to work on, where you might not have enough for one person to help do some of these things, but 3 or 4 towns together. I mean, that might be a full-time person who could work on all these things with all of you.
Alex, just want to jump in a second to clarify, because you didn't really get to the bottom of the last line. Also, too, this is also including, you know, making our website a more friendly user, having all digital information on the website for permits and things along that nature. And Alex is talking about, you know, part-time, and the mayor and I have been talking about part-time or a media company to handle promoting our events, to make sure that public events get promoted in all the right places. And same thing with the Green Team and all of our other civic groups. So that's a big step for us. We're too small to have someone full-time promoting our civic groups and all of our events and all the things that are fun for the community. But we can afford to do a shared service or a part-time person to do that, and we're starting to get the ball rolling. That's what we're talking about, right, Alex?
Yeah, so all of these different pieces, and it's all kind of based on how you all triage this, you know, what you want to start with and do after that and after that. One of the nice things about what's in this report is if you are thinking about doing a website, that is something that we do have a really nice kind of checklist of things to think about if you're thinking about upgrading the website. That's one of the things that I've done. The consulting company that I owned previously, we did websites and communication and media work, and so there's some tips in there that should really help smooth things over if you're thinking about doing a new website. I've seen those take 3 months, and I've seen them take 3 years. And I think you want to be in the former category, obviously. So there's a bunch of different things that can fall under this number 2 recommendation here. We have some communication platforms and methodologies that we also recommend. One of the questions that we get a lot is people are sort of asking, you know, should we use Facebook to discuss things with the community, for example? That's like a question that comes up. How do we engage people online? And so anything like that, if anybody wants to ask, like, we can get into any more detail about that. I'm just going to sort of run through these.
The 7.
Here. So I think that is, let me just check my notes. Yeah, the most important thing here for that is that before beginning, you know, any sort of new communication program where you're going to be like emailing people or contacting people through social media on a regular basis, really important to work out the policy ahead of time, who's able to post to it, who's going to be managing it, what staff person is responsible, how are you moderating comments if it's social media, right? There are some Oprah and OPMA issues there that you want to speak with your municipal attorney about and make sure that you're doing that the right way. And there's also some things here that we've seen some towns do with some success as far as Oprah is concerned. Every town is different, but clerks, so many clerks that I know are under so much pressure from Oprah. And sometimes it's, okay. And it's not, obviously, I think I'm sure we all agree it's important that the public have access to records, but on the other hand, the state makes the requirements and we all have to kind of pay for it. And, some people, some companies and some individuals, use Oprah in ways that it's not always intended for. And so how do we balance, getting people information who really need and should be able to access it and discouraging people from abusing it? One of the things that we talk about in the report here is, trying to make the Oprah process as electronic as possible and providing responses to people. And then, so something we did in South Orange where I was mayor, we had an issue with some individuals who were abusing Oprah a little bit. And we didn't want to discourage the kind of good Samaritan people from using it. So what we started doing was posting all of the requests and responses in a spreadsheet on the website. And we would put the requester's name and the topic and the actual PDF of the request and the PDF of the response. And we would put how many staff hours it took and what the estimated cost was. We weren't actually billing people for any of that. We didn't want to do that, but we did want to show the public how much it was costing the municipality. And that was part of what we organized a little bit with some other towns to go to our state reps and say, hey, every year we're spending X amount fulfilling Oprah requests. Is that a cost that maybe the legislature can, consider giving back in aid to the towns? And so tracking that can help from a money perspective, and posting the responses in a spreadsheet can sometimes help because sometimes people are requesting the same thing over and over, and so they're already all up there.
I have a question.
Sure.
Where did you post this information? On the website?
Yeah, so that was all on the website. We had an Oprah page, and what we had was a spreadsheet on that Oprah page. It was like a Google spreadsheet. So every time we put a new one in, we could just enter it in live, and the spreadsheet was just on the website, so it just updated automatically. So every time the request was finished, someone in our clerk's office went into that spreadsheet. It was like a live Google sheet, typed the information in, and then that was the only thing they had to do each time. So it was really easy to keep it updated.
Alex, this is Nick. Quick question. Do you find that municipalities that put more information on the website, does that help? So it maybe eliminates Oprah because you're already putting the stuff out there? Did you find that was a good practice? Were there certain things that were better to put on websites and other things that weren't good to put on websites?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think, so I do have a reaction to that, but I'll also say it's a little hard sometimes to tell what caused what, or if things are correlated or caused, whether they got less, there are some towns I think that have a lot of responses, and then in response to that, they started putting information online. And so like South Orange, for example, we did see a small decrease, but what we did that I think was really valuable that stopped us from having more Oprah requests is we use a records management system called Laserfiche, and it can be a little expensive, it can take a little bit of time to set up, and there used to be these Paris grants that the counties offered, and I'm sure you haven't seen that, it's been gone for years. And so it's tough because the value of an online records management system where basically what we were doing in South Orange was all of the documents that were public were just made public on the website unless they were exempted. So if they were electronic documents, we just listed them on the website. And so it was all sorts of different categories of things. And that we do believe that did cut down on the Oprah requests because our clerk could say, they could respond and say, this document is available at this URL. And eventually people kind of knew that was there. So it was sort of a policy of make public documents electronically available freely on the website by default.
But Alex, if the clerk says it's available, can they still, don't they still have the legal right to ask for it?
That is correct, yes.
So I don't know if back then what we would do is take the URL and send that to the person and say the document is available on this link and you can download it here. It's possible the clerk was asking the person sort of like hey, would you like to do this? And if the person said no, I don't want to do it, then the clerk would still fulfill the Oprah request. But at least it was giving them most people, not all, but most don't want to be they don't want it. Some want to be difficult, but most, if you give them the link, they'll just go, they'll go download it.
I have a question about how do you direct your residents to use your website for the information that they need that's going on in the town? Because I find that our residents do not go to our website. They go to the, how can I say this politely? The nasty, where people post their worst thoughts about the town. That is where they go for information. And even if you have the information on your website, they choose not to go there. That's
a really good, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't know how to do that. The only thing I could think of is possibly using a Nixle type program to get information out to people, where people have to sign up, of course, and then you can blast them with, this event is coming up. You're still not going to reach everyone, but at least that's something you're putting in their email chain, or wherever it goes, or a text, or however you choose to do it. Because I really find that people choose to go to these gossipy, trash websites, and most of the information is false that they get. I don't know how to do that.
It's tough, and I'm really glad you asked that question, because it gives us a chance to talk about a couple things here that I think are potentially really valuable. And so I think this is a problem for whatever it's worth. I don't know if this is your experience with other clerks as well, but I see this in a lot of towns. This is pretty common, right? It's all over the place, and people, the number of times that people reach out with questions and the answers on the front page of the website, and So there's a couple different pieces to this. The first is the website needs to have, everything really easy to find. It's got to be, as easy, literally as easy as possible. Otherwise, if it takes one extra step, people are going to go to Facebook where they're already, looking at stuff. And so, there's a lot of information on the Borough website. It could also be redone. I think you could probably go either way with that. But I don't know if you have. So the first question would be: do you know if you have Google Analytics set up on the website where you can see what pages people visit?
I know that we used to. I have to ask the current person.
I believe so.
Yes, I believe
we don't look at it.
That's a great resource.
I'm going to interject something here for Joyce and everybody else. Our website, believe it or not, even though it's kind of prehistoric, it's better than it was a couple of years ago. And as soon as we have the ability, and it won't be long, for people to go to our website to look at all of the civic groups and click on a link and have it take you to their website or their Facebook. That's going to be interesting. More people will go to our website when it can do more things and take them other places.
I'm cynic, John.
We're very limited. It doesn't do anything. It's just
I see the residents choosing to go to the trashy, gossipy place.
I've never been on it. I never will. I hear about it, and I don't live that way.
It's right on our website, but they choose not to go there.
I just wanted to interject because when we have more diversity and more things that they can do, and that they can travel around the town just from our webpage, I think it's going to be very effective. That's it. Good.
And there are definitely...
You have to remember something also. They like that page, and when they like that page, when something gets posted, it'll go on their page. so they get to say, hey, something just got put up.
They do tag
Yeah.
something, put it on to the trash website. If we
It's
post.
all about drama, and people love drama, and you can't take that away. You know
And
it.
this is a problem. This is a problem in most towns. Most towns have these alternate Facebook pages where proposing information about the town is, which is.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in, because if we have time at the end, we're gonna go in deeper, but I think we have a lot of points to cover. Alex, take it back.
Yeah. So let me just add a few. I don't want to forget a couple things here. Sounds like this is on people's minds, and I do. So if there's a few things here. When we talk a little bit about like creating a committee for doing public engagement, one of the things that is a really good activity for a group like that to do is to recruit people in the community to be like civic facilitators or, online discussion kind of like advocates or champions or whatever kind of word you want to use. And this is basically people that are like residents in the community that are committing to participate in discussion on their own, like online, whatever they're doing currently. But instead of pushing their agenda, they're helping people have better conversations and get to the right places. So for example, if someone posts something on Facebook, why isn't the trash being picked up today? And you've already posted a notice about it on the website, right? What you want to start to do is get people from those places to the website. And so having people, someone says, I don't know why my trash wasn't picked up. Why wasn't I notified? Then somebody, John Smith says, I really understand how frustrating that can be. Number one, are you signed up for the alerts from the borough? Number two, did you check the trash page before posting here? Because I saw they updated that at 9 a.m. this morning. Having a couple dozen people in your community where you basically spend like a half hour or an hour sort of training them a little bit on, hey, here's what we're asking you to do. It's really important, right? But you need allies out there who, without any management from the municipality, are just going to help point people in the right direction. And that can be a really valuable thing to do, because you don't have to worry about it, you don't have to think about it. You just say to those 20 people, we really appreciate you doing this. Here's what we kind of want you to do, and then you kind of let them loose. And the more that they turn people back to the official resources, over time that might help a little bit. So that's one small thing that can potentially make a difference here. And so we can go into some of this in a little more detail. I think, Joyce, you were right. I mean, to get people out there there's going to have to be a big proactive push from the borough's standpoint. One of the things that I often say in these kind of examples is, I'm sure all of us have, been involved in political campaigns or nonprofit, advocacy campaigns. I mean, think about if you were running for office and you created a website with your stuff on it and you didn't call anybody and you just hope they come to the website, right? It's an easy way to think about, we've got to reach out to people and be proactive. And the only way that we're going to get them to the website is if we reach out to them, let them know the website exists, show them that it has the content they're interested in, provide the infrastructure for people to redirect them when they go to the wrong places. And so it could be a thing that you do over a year where maybe on weekends you knock on doors with a little index card that you hand out to people that has the website on it. And, do you want to know the latest update on X, Y, and Z? You can always go to the website at this address and just hand that out to people. And have some volunteers help you do that on a couple weekends. And if you start doing some things like that, the word will eventually start to get out a little more. It won't happen overnight, but it will start going in the other direction. So those are a couple thoughts there. And yeah, let me move on to number 3. And so this was a little bit outside the normal scope of this project. This is something that I thought was really important to include. As an administrator in a couple different towns, this is a great way to do public engagement, which is basically doing a really, really open, multi-year, thorough, strategic budget planning process. And so looking at all of your capital needs, looking at your affordable housing obligations, talking about personnel in the borough and when we're, are we expecting a lot of retirement soon? Do we have budgeted, sick days and personal days and all that kind of stuff that might be built up over years? And having that conversation publicly so the community understands like exactly where the finances of the borough are. Most towns don't really do multi-year planning. And so what we're just sort of recommending here is doing a budget process, but instead of doing it for the year that you're doing it in, do it for 6 years out and try to get a sense of where's your debt service going, where is your facility cost going. And that's a good thing to engage people on, because then any future decisions that you make that have a budget component, you've already got some information more out in the community about what the state of the budget is. There are some communities where people say, oh, everything's fine. The borough, the town has plenty of money. They don't really know that, debt's rising, or that, your pension obligation or healthcare costs have been rising for 5 years. And, and getting that information out there can be I almost said a fun way to engage people. Maybe that's my own bias. But it can be a way to engage people that gets them brought into the process a little bit and helps them have a little bit of a framework for whatever decisions you make in the future about what you're doing. So I'll just sort of leave that there. That was recommendation number 4. That was recommendation number 3. Recommendation number 4 was talking about building this local committee infrastructure to promote business, art, and cultural development that is going to happen in the ways that are aligned with your goals. And I know Councilman, we had talked a little bit about that there's already the Reimagine Runnemede. There's things in process already, which is really great. It's easy, especially in New Jersey. We're so dense. We're so next to other towns, for development to end up happening in a way that isn't consistent, with your goals. It might be consistent with the developer's goals, but it might not be. It's easy for that to be not matched. And so having your group really active and really solid about where do we want the community to go? What do we want things to look like? In 10 years, do we want more parking or do we want more pedestrians? Where are the values of the community going forward? Having all that really clear can help you make sure that, if you're talking to developers and doing redevelopment, that they are fitting into your goals, not the other way around. And one of the things that might be worth considering there is, so there's 2 things I'll mention here, is collecting feedback and surveying stakeholders, especially businesses. So I mentioned an example of this from South Orange. We had a Main Street organization that did our downtown management. We ended up authorizing and creating an improvement district and merged the Main Street into the improvement district. And there was a little controversy in the community when it happened. Not every business owner sort of understood the value of an improvement district. A few years later, it's like impossible to imagine the downtown without it. It's so active. They're doing so much work on behalf of the businesses. But one of the things that we learned from that process was, we asked business owners, tell us everything wrong with the way that our code works in relation to your business. And one of the things they told us that none of us knew was that we wanted outdoor dining. All the furniture was required to be cast iron because we had, sort of historic and aesthetic requirements and everything around downtown. But we also required the businesses take the furniture in every night. And, nobody had thought that, the one person closing up at 2 a.m. cannot carry these cast iron tables in and out, every single day. And so all the business owners, they said, this is really stupid. How do you guys not know that it's working this way? And he said, you're right about that. That doesn't work. That sounds like that is a problem. So we changed that. We allowed different types of furniture. We cut the application fee in half the next year for outdoor dining. And I think it was almost 3 times the number of food establishments applied for outdoor dining that year. And it was a really great way to get all of those business owners involved by just asking, tell us everything we're doing wrong and we'll see what we can do about that. And they really appreciated that.
Might be afraid to answer that question, but
yeah, it is. It brings some anxiety, and that pointed out, but I think the nice thing is that even if they point out a lot of things and you say, okay, here are the top 10 things that businesses want us to improve on, some of those things are going to be doable. Some of those might take longer, but I'm sure a couple of those things, like that outdoor dining thing, they're going to be easy. And they're going to be things that you can show the businesses that you're serious about this, and kind of say, all right, we can't get to this really big one this year, but we can do the smaller one, and like, be patient, we're going to work with you here, and you can show them a little bit. And again, it's a good way to get those people engaged. Obviously we know people love, saying what you're doing wrong, so I'm sure people will respond to that survey. Let's see. Why don't we move on to recommendation number 5, which is about a volunteer engagement plan. So this is really important for every town, but especially for the borough, because especially with the green team and the environmental commission, there's so much green work that you want to do over the next 5 or 10 years. These committees have got to have like more members than they know what to do with, and got to have alternates, and there might be subcommittees where people aren't officially, they're not a statutory member of the environmental commission, but they're on an advisory committee that they're appointed to, for example. Like, there should be no person, in the borough who wants to get involved who isn't on a committee doing some sort of work. And so we have a couple strategies here, a couple ideas about how to build that out. One idea, especially considering the amount of redevelopment, and I know there's a redevelopment zone or plan that's being discussed right now. I don't know if there's like a development committee where you have residents on the committee to assist with that. That was one of the best committees that we had in South Orange. I think we had maybe 9 or 11 members on it, and some of the people on the committee, they're residents, but their day job is working for developers or property managers, and so their companies couldn't work on projects in town because they were on the committee, but they were really, the advice that we got from people who worked at, one or two in particular, who worked at very large developers and could tell us like, oh, no, that's a trap, don't do it that way, and they just had amazing advice that helped guide us a little bit as we were doing the development stuff. And because I think like all of you, we were only interested in doing development that was consistent with what our community wanted, right? We didn't want some cookie cutter project that, we're just looking at the bottom line. We wanted something that was going to be aesthetically matching of the community, that was going to include, outdoor space, that was going to improve the pedestrian circulation in the downtown. We wanted all those things. And developers knew that. We sat with, a developer would be interested, we'd sit with them in a neighborhood association and talk about the development project. And there were some developers that refused to come to South Orange because they didn't want to sit with community groups. And we said, fine, if you don't want to meet with our residents, then we don't really want you doing work here anyway. And the ones that did meet with the residents were really open about, okay, yeah, we're going to change the height, we're going to move this back, we're going to do different bricks. And that all happened before any projects were formally worked on or came before a land use board. So we would be issuing variances for projects, and on a couple of occasions, I remember looking out in the audience in the planning board and the zoning board meetings, and people in the audience just gave a thumbs up, and like, that was it. And then we did the variance and moved on. And like, it was pretty cool to see that kind of support for these projects. But we had spent a lot of time beforehand, like working out all the details to make sure the projects fit with the community. So anything that can help you early on build the community support, because the worst thing you could do, maybe not the worst thing, but a disappointing thing would be spending the time, hiring the redevelopment attorneys, hiring the planners, doing all this work, then getting to the end of it and people in the community saying, oh no, we weren't involved in this, we're not sure about this. So that's one good way to get people engaged as well. The other thing that we mentioned in here is creating like a volunteer guide online. That's a really easy thing to make a simple version of, which is basically like, it could be a Word document that you post in a PDF or something that's just every local service and volunteer opportunity on behalf of the borough and with local organizations, as well. and just like put everything on there and let the community groups know that this guide exists, submit their information, and that's a good way for you to get that in front of more people. Because now, if you let's say a house of worship that runs a volunteer food bank program, you reach out to them to get their information listed in your volunteer guide, and then when you're done, you send them the volunteer guide, and that also shows all the ways that people can volunteer with the borough, and you hope that they circulate that out to their members. And so anything that you can do there to put that information online, can really help. The more interactive stuff can be a little expensive, but it could be a good shared service grant. And, we mentioned this in the report, the Department of Community Affairs has grant money for municipal governments in New Jersey right now. They would love to fund more grant projects, from what I understand. So
what organization is that?
That's the Department of Community Affairs. It's in maybe it's in recommendation 3 or 4 where we talk about the local efficiency and achievement program grants, the LEAP grants. Those are grants that I would highly recommend applying for. And if you have an innovative shared service there, the odds are really not bad at all that you're going to get some funding for that. They are looking for interesting projects, and this is just my own personal opinion here, that a multi-town interactive volunteer matching guide where people put in, I can only volunteer at night, or I can only volunteer on the weekends, or I can only volunteer remotely, or things like that, and then the system helps point them in the right direction, but it's done with multiple towns. My personal opinion, I think that's a pretty cool idea, and would be interesting. It'd be great to see that kind of stuff out there, and that might make a good grant application for the state and help pay for getting something like that together. So let's see. And the other thing, which is a small detail but worth mentioning, is just basically every time that you're having any event about anything, including let's hope we can get back to, in-person, governing body meetings one day. I don't know if you have a sign-up sheet for public comments, for example, but if you do, make sure you've got an email address column on that, and make sure people are putting their email addresses in. And then after every council meeting, email those people and just say, thank you for coming to the council meeting. We really appreciate. We're adding your email to our update list. If you want to unsubscribe, here's the link. And then every meeting, you're just slowly getting people signed up into that system and engaged back and forth with the borough. And you can do that, at anytime you have any event, is basically your sign-up sheet should have a little thing that says, by putting your email address here, you're agreeing to receive, monthly updates from the borough. And then just put them in, whatever you choose to do there, you can just throw those email addresses in. Recommendation number 6, we just talked about a little bit, which is finding some funding sources. And so these LEAP grants are mentioned in the first bullet point. Really suggest looking into those. I know you all are already part of a really good the ESC co-op, which is great for purchasing. But they have some technology assistance too, and it's called their Digital Divide program. And so that's something that co-op that you all are already part of offers. It might be worth reaching out to the rep or contact person there and just asking if there's anything that you should be aware of, any resources they have. We included a little bit about some road funding infrastructure, most of which you'll probably already be familiar with. We included some links to Sustainable Jersey's funding. And then, this is another thing that I just kind of wanted to make sure we put in here was, that there are ways to help the community financially beyond the municipal budget. Energy aggregation for residential customers can help with that potentially. Community solar programs are really interesting. In Sustainable Jersey, we included some links to that as well. Excuse me. And an easy thing that kind of gets overlooked sometimes because it's like almost so obvious that it's not obvious is, if there are individuals who work close to where they live, if you're able to provide alternative transportation options, bike lanes, car sharing, things like that, the person, maybe the family has a second car only for use and they only use it once a week or twice a week or something. I mean, if you can save someone money on not having to buy a car, it has nothing to do with the municipal budget, but, that could be a real impact. And so it's worth sort of thinking about it that way too. It's not just an environmental benefit. A couple of these other grant programs we listed out here, some other resources. And then recommendation number 7 is the implementing a 311 or online municipal service system to promote more interactive processes with the borough. This is kind of a two-tier thing because doing one of these programs, I'm sure many of you have heard of Spatial Data Logic or GovPilot. It's a little bit of a lift. They're big programs, they're not cheap, and you kind of have to make sure you buy them the right way so you get the different modules that you need without paying too much for the ones you don't need. However, the programs are really great. They are your construction basically everything that a member of the public would do runs through the same program. So whether someone is reserving a park or filing an Oprah request or renewing a dog license or filing a permit with the construction office, right? It would all go through this. They would log into the same place and it would all go through the same thing. And you would be able to track all of that on the back. It might take a couple years if you think that's something that you want to do, but I'll also say this is a great shared service opportunity also, and one that I've received grant funding from DCA to do. So they are interested, it seems, in supporting towns moving onto these systems, and if you can do it with multiple towns at the same time, maybe you share a construction official or a zoning official or someone like that, and you can get 2 towns to do it at the same time, then you can apply for grant funding to help pay for some of the initial costs. On the more kind of lower hanging fruit side, things that really we recommend that every town do is have things like a checklist for new businesses, so that you have one place on the website, one document that says here are the literal steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in opening a business in Runnemede. Here's who you need to talk to, here's a link to the forms, and just make it really easy for someone to see exactly what to do. One of the other things that I actually haven't done before, but would love to see a town do, I think it would be really cool, is recording like a 3-minute or 5-minute video from your construction official, from your fire marshal, from your zoning official, basically introducing themselves and saying, hi, I'm Alex, I'm a zoning officer. My job is to make sure that all new, businesses in Runnemede comply with our, zoning code. But I'm here to help you open up. And here's my contact information, and here's the website. And when you think about like promoting yourself to new businesses that aren't there yet, if they see that kind of stuff on the website, they're going to have a really positive reaction to that. And one of the things that they think about when thinking about what towns to move to, how easy is it going to be to work with this municipality? That's a really high priority, especially if it's a bigger business where they're, have multiple franchises or something, and they kind of know what to do here. They want to know, is this going to be easy to open up? Are we going to be able to call the fire inspector? Are we going to be able to do this quickly and efficiently? So anything you can do to kind of show that really helps. And you can create, fillable forms are really easy to do. So PDF documents, basically every document should be in a form where when you open the PDF, you can type into each of the sections of it and save it instead of having to print it and write on it. It might take just a couple hours to, if they're not like that currently, to upgrade all of the forms that way. You still might need to bring them in and pay for it, but at least the person can type it in on their computer. Maybe they can email the form in, and now your staff person who's entering the information in, instead of trying to read people's handwriting and figure out what it says, they can just copy and paste right out of the form, and it makes their job a little bit easier too. It saves paper, saves a little bit of costs. And so that's one thing that we recommend is any process that can be done electronically, like it doesn't require a payment, like a check, because setting up online payments can be a little bit harder. You know, if there are block parties or anything like that, all of those should be electronic forms on the website that people can submit. And you want to try and cut down on the number of handwritten things as much as possible. So that's just a couple examples of some low-hanging fruit ways to get some engagement. And then one additional thing I'll mention, just because I know that the sort of history and culture and like getting people in the community on board, like, I don't know, more engaged with all of that seems like that's something that's important to the borough is, you know, we created a website in South Orange through the public library that was a local history wiki. And so it's actually built on the Wikipedia software, which is free and available for anybody to use. And it allows anybody with a registered email address, it's not anonymous, but it allows anybody registered to contribute their stories about the history. And so we ended up having students like from Seton Hall University and in our public schools, you know, interview seniors at some of the senior events in some of the senior buildings that, you know, they were really connected to the library already, and just get people's interviews out and stories about things that happened in town 80 years ago that the only person who knows it, it's them in their head. And we wanted to get those things out. You can scan people's photographs from shoeboxes. It's just a cool way potentially to get people that really are interested in history. You know, a lot of towns you post like a historic photo on the Facebook page, you know, or something like that. But this is sort of building a database so that younger people in the borough can actually go and look at different time periods and look at different neighborhoods, and it's kind of organized, you know, as like a database that could actually be learning materials for people. So I just think that's like a particularly cool thing to do, and can be, you know, for people that are looking to volunteer but they don't want to be on a committee, you know, basically like choosing, you know, okay, we're going to interview 3 people, you know, each person is going to interview 3 people, and you're going to transcribe those interviews onto the website. That could be like a really fun project for everyone. So I'll stop there. There's sort of 7 recommendations, and I'm happy to, you know, go into any area in more detail if there's any questions.
Wow, that's quite a mouthful. That's a lot. And I don't. This is not anything that you know. When I hear all this, as I read through it, the mayor reads through it, Ella read through it, I get tired because it looks like an awful lot of work. Yeah. But you got to remember, it's implemented in stages. It's also going to be implemented strategically. You know, we're not scrambling. We have it here. We can go back to it. We can review it. We can bring it up at our meetings. We can see how far we are. And there's a lot of great information here. We've started some of these things already. This is going to help us get more organized. And I think it's fantastic. It is a 5-year, 6-year plan, you know, to really get everything engaged. But I would say in 5 or 6 years, the town's going to look an awful lot different if we can get 75% of this stuff engaged. So, any questions? Nick, you got any questions? Anybody got questions out here?
Well, I do want to say one thing that, you know, when I read this the first time and I went through it, and I think I told John and maybe some of the other members, is it really comes down to people and money to implement. And so I think we have the council here that is prepared to invest in this engagement that I think we all know we need with our public. So this first step I think we're going to have to take is in this coming budget right now, we have to put some money in to, I think the answer is going to be is bring somebody in to improve our website, to improve our social media presence, to gather the information, because once that comes together, you know, Alex, I like the way, you know, we bring these volunteers in, but we have to be organized with the volunteers. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, putting these committees together. But I think the first step is this employee, really, and I believe it has to be an employee, even if it's just a part-timer or, like you say, a shared service is even the better solution, where we share someone between another community and move with this. And I think we have a couple opportunities coming up right now that we can do that.
Hey, Nick, even if we don't have another town in mind that that is doing, they might be the same position as us. They don't have the media or the promotions or have enough in their budget to have a person. We could share it. We could bring this to their attention. We don't have to wait for anybody to come to us. We could talk to some of these towns that we would want to possibly start a shared service with. They don't have anything either, but maybe they can get it in their budget as well. And of course, I'm looking at our surrounding neighbors, and I'm sure you'll even know better than me who we may approach with that.
Yeah, so just to let you know, there's been some talk to bring in a, Public Works is one department that needs to communicate with the public almost as much as any other department, maybe even more. And so currently, if everyone knows, if you call the Public Works Department, you get an answer machine. And so the Public Works Director, Mr. Wozunk, has lobbied for many years now to get somebody in there, even part-time, that can answer the phone and help communicate with the residents. That basically, to me, is a jump off of a lot of these things that we've been talking about today to engage with the community. So by him doing that shared service with Magnolia right now, it lends it so that we could do two things at once. We could satisfy his need for some type of a staff person on a part-time basis, but also turn it into what I'm actually calling, it seems almost like a PR person. Is that what you would call it, Alex? I think it's the first step. Is really it's a PR aspect to this to our company.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is for these different roles that your responsibilities that you're identifying here, this person, you have a little bit of flexibility geographically where that person is, and with any other towns that you might work with. If you're sharing a public works plow, you kind of got to be neighbors. But if you're sharing someone who's answering the phone, there are ways to do that where someone could be in one town and answer for both. Like there's a little bit of flexibility there. So I think that there's probably some opportunities along the lines of what you're thinking about that could work.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say PR and media. We're looking for someone for our PR and media, or all of our electronic media and things like that. So we're going to look into some media companies, see what they offer for smaller scale businesses and possibly municipalities before we go hiring somebody. We've got some options. Do you know about that, Alex? Are there media companies out there that would give you someone to handle these things?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I might be able to think a little bit here. Sustainable Jersey, we don't typically recommend a particular company or not. I'm happy to talk with you a little offline about that. This is something also, I'll just say as a side note, I think it's sort of these sorts of things, there is nowhere to get this information in New Jersey like right now. IT support companies, like media, like there's just nowhere to go where you can find all of these different, this is something that I learned a little bit from doing this process with Sustainable Jersey, was just how little organized information there is on the different vendors. And so a project that I might do on my kind of own here, and I'll certainly contact you all if I get this done, is creating sort of a database where all of these different vendors in these different areas would be listed. And so that you could go on and look at, okay, here are the 10 companies and here are the reviews. And I mean, we can do that for everything in our lives except all the stuff that we buy through government for some reason.
Okay, great.
I can talk a little offline with you about that. I'm happy to try.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. Good to know. Thank you. Anything else, Nick?
No, I'm good.
I would say if they're, like Nick said, people and money, I think investing in the time because Reimagine Runnemede, as it's growing, has really done well. Also tracking all of our efforts on Facebook and all the other things. We're looking at our progress and we're looking at our responses. But volunteers, the same old volunteers, you see a lot of them here, and we want to expand that. And I think that we have to make it fun. We have to make it exciting. All of our different programs, our groups, the Green Team, and even our council meetings, make it more interesting in some capacity to get people to come out and be interested and inquisitive. The sign-up sheets, the volunteer sign-up sheet on the website is a good thing that you mentioned. Where people can see, we need this, we're looking for this, we're looking for that. I think that's where we start with these little baby steps, a little investment in the way that we're presenting what we need. I don't even know if we're presenting it properly. And we're going through this with Reimagine Runnemede, but I think we're going to take a lot of the success we've had and bring that to the borough. And I think that's a good place to start. So, not exactly a question, but there's a million questions. There's a lot to do. Now, we didn't cover everything. There's parts of the program, Alex, that you put to us. What is it that we didn't cover? What can we refer back to? Give us some tools. What are we looking at?
So there's basically two other sections of the report. There's a strategies and tactics section. And so that, for example, talks a little bit about things like, our recommendations on how to build out committees effectively. Most of everything in these are a lot from my best practices of sort of trying this in different towns and working with people in different towns and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. They're all just sort of, as you go about these things, so like, for example, in that one, in the local committee infrastructure one, something that I've come into contact with for years. So, as a mayor, I was unpaid. I was on our rescue squad as a volunteer EMT, I was unpaid. But I would go on panels sometimes, like at conferences, about government and politics and things, and people would say, oh, you can't rely on volunteers to like do important things. And I'm like, well, wait a second. When people call 911 and volunteers answer, like, I think we can rely on volunteers, but so why does that work so well? And what are the other problems? And one of the things that I sort of, my own sort of conclusion here is that sometimes we ask volunteers to do too little. And that we don't, that there are some people who want to get involved, but they don't want to come to a committee meeting and just kind of chat for an hour or two. They want to like work on stuff. And if the environment isn't that currently, those people are going to they're going to become disinterested. And so like making things formal, appointing people, formally by an order or resolution, having them come to the meetings, if you can, giving them a municipal email address or giving the group a municipal email address that they can use, making sure they're listed on the website, when they come and present before the council, making sure that, they've got everything prepared ahead of time and kind of taking it seriously. And so that's one of the things that I found that if you sort of take it seriously with the volunteers, some of them, the ones that you really want, they'll take it seriously back. And so there's like little tips like that, sort of throughout that. So we have, a project planning section that to me is maybe the most important like thing overall, which is just always approaching these things in steps. Thinking about what you want to do for your goals, thinking like going step by step and making sure that, especially if you're doing a really big project, that you might actually consider writing up a project plan. And if there's going to be, let's say you've got mayor and a council member and a department head and 2 staff working on it and a member of the public, let's say, that people actually review the project plan and sign it and say, this is what we're committing to. We've got 18 months to do this project. Every 2 weeks, we're going to provide a written update for the website. Like getting everybody's expectations on the same page, really, really important, I think. So we go through some other things like that. You have the documents that we use with you through the process. So you're obviously, there's nothing, particularly innovative about those steps. They represent other project planning, steps. But feel free to use the documents that we used. I sent you, you got blank versions of all of them at the end in your sort of resources link at the very end of the document. So that might be helpful. So we talk about a few other things like that, like creating your social media policy and plan. And then at the end, we talk about different technology tools that are out there. And we go through a couple different, so we talk about mapping. We talk about if you want to do, like project management stuff, which my own personal opinion is really great with volunteer committees. If anybody's ever used something called Basecamp before, that's a pretty popular one. But it's basically an online project management software where you can put the due dates and you can upload files, you can assign different tasks to people, and it's all organized in one place. And there are free ones out there for small teams. And it makes it a lot easier than doing everything by email sometimes. So we talk a little bit about that, and a little bit about survey tools, records management, the electronic contracts. We have a few pages on the 311 systems, and so you can go through all that as well. And really, John, like you meant, this is not meant to be here. We're saying start at the cover and end at the end of it, right? This is just however you want to take it and put it in your own order. But hopefully everything in here can be a reference point, kind of as you go forward. So feel free, pick things out. I think it's a good idea for everyone to take a look through the whole thing, and see what's in there, and then pick things out as you need them, for however you want to work on it going forward.
Thank you, Alex. Joyce, I believe this is being recorded, correct? Can you show me how I can go back and access this and allow some key players and stakeholders in town to review this? There's a lot of great information here, and we may want to watch it again and have some other people watch it. So could you make it easy for me? Because I don't know about GoToMeeting. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Yes, I will get it to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because this will be invaluable to review with some of the key people in some of our groups, like Reimagine Runnemede, some of the young people that are really moving the organization forward to get an idea of what how we want to bring some more of that into our borough, and get some of these bigger, some of these people involved in a little different scale. So this is great. Thank you, Alex.
John, what exactly are you looking for our residents to go and see exactly what this meeting was all about?
Not our residents. No, not our residents.
Who?
Just some key players on some of our civic groups.
When you say key players, that's who?
It could be Harry. It could be whoever I deem to be a key player.
Okay, well, I was just confused because you have Dan Connors sitting out there, and he records everything. If you ever want to know, just go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
this will be on the blog?
It's on the blog. He'll put it on the blog. And it's in YouTube. So you can go. Every meeting that we've ever had in our town is on YouTube.
Okay. All right. Well, then there's multiple ways. That's great. I want this to be easily accessible, because you see how much information is. And then behind this is a few hundred-page, possibly, resource book that we're going to be able to work with. So the more people that have an opportunity to see how we got to this point and what we've talked about, the more that we can get the younger people in this town involved and want to make more of a difference. That's where I'm going with all this. So I think it's fantastic. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome, John. And our newsletter.
Yes. Anybody else?
No, I don't know if there's any more questions, anything else we have to go over for this evening. I mean, I think we've got something to start on. I believe the next step for us is to really have this budgetary discussion, and then the commitment to kind of move forward. I mean, I know some of the things we're already moving forward on our own, but I really feel that we're really going to have to put some people involved. I mean, like you said, I see the same people volunteer, and a lot of it is us. So we've got to bring more people into this group. But no, if there's nothing else on this topic, I can.
Can I just say one thing? I just want you to know that we already have an agreement with Joyce Media that handles our website and our Facebook.
Yeah, the only thing I can say about that is he still needs someone to give him the information and gather the information.
And that's basically what Harry and I do that.
And because we don't, right, and I do believe that as we move forward, we're going to have somebody will have more of a relationship with Joyce Media and direct them in the direction we want them to be. Because right now, they're doing the limited, they're just status quo, they're happy. They don't want to, they don't really, I don't think that they're really concerned that our organizations grow and there's more access to the town. I don't think that's their concern. Their concern is to make us happy. And if we're not letting them know that we need more done, then they're not going to do it.
Well,
so
you have to tell them what you want.
And there it is. You're busy doing your job. I'm busy doing my job. We're all busy doing our job. There's nobody to tell them that. But this new PR person is going to be able to tell them what we need. That's where we're headed, right, Nick?
Yes, absolutely. So what I'll do is, because this is a public meeting, I will open this portion of the meeting to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please give your name and address. And, no one? Okay, hearing no one, is someone make a motion to close the public portion?
I'll make a motion to close the public portion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Portion is
All right.
Anything else before we adjourn? Alex, I do want to thank you for coming on here and explaining in a little more detail these goals. I mean, obviously, I did read and made a lot of notes on the 50 pages that was sent over. And obviously, it's a little overwhelming, but I agree with the idea you start taking small steps. And I think we're at the point right now for the next big step for us is we can't keep doing it all ourselves. We got to bring somebody in to help us out. And,
Which is also more volunteers, more committees, and educate ourselves on how to make that happen. And it will happen. You know, Nick, like you said a long time ago when I first started, how do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. That's how this is. One bite at a time. We'll get it done. I'm excited. It's a great roadmap. Thank you, Alex. Much appreciated. And,
I'm very happy to get to work on this, and I love the energy and enthusiasm, from all of you about wanting to work on these things, seeing the value of what this can produce. Though, I mean, I really wish you the best of luck on it. And at some point this summer, I would love to come by and get a tour of the borough. And so maybe John, I'll email you about that offline.
Absolutely, that'll be great. That'll be fantastic. I look forward to it.
Really wish you the best of luck. I think this is off to a really good start, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex.
thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
Yeah. All right.
You too.
At this portion, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Lobenstein, second by Ms. Patio. All in favor?
Bye. See you all tomorrow, right?
Y'all, we'll see you tomorrow night, another meeting.
All right, guys.
Tomorrow, bro.